quick goodbye, John. Ready to go? Jordan, you guys ready?
Yeah.
Got a chance to walk in and out. Time to do rooms there. You're on, guy.
All right, I think we probably had the toughest job in South Carolina. Not only did we kind of have to pinch hit at the last minute, we got to follow the king of South Carolina and Monty Lee, a great presenter, and then obviously we get this. Number one, I think two things we're going to try to do here is we're going to try to, give you kind of an inside look in kind of what our pitching program is, some of the things that we're trying to do, how we're trying to develop players, because obviously we want, when you have good players, to think of us as a place to send them. But also, we're going to try to give you some things that are actable, things you can take back and use as well. And sometimes that's a fine balance, because I know our resources are different than the resources that you have. I'm a small school guy at heart, played at a small school, coached high school baseball, coached at an NAIA school, small Division I, Duke, Texas, and then here. And I think sometimes when I was going through that process of moving up, I always thought at that next level there was like some magic dust that they knew that we didn't know, and then you get there and you find it out, and that's why the players are good. And it's just not the truth. We all do the same things. It's not what you do; it's how you do it. And so, really, the key to this thing that we're going to try to show is that, hey, we might have a different tool to do it, we might have a different word to use, but the reality of the situation is we're all doing the same things. It's about how we can get our players to kind of buy into what we're doing and try to get the message across to them. So we're kind of the title of our thing is kind of the body, the ball, and how to win. The three kind of buckets that we think that you have to have when you're trying to develop pitchers. Okay, we'll start. We'll talk about the body first. I'm more of a ball guy myself. I'm more on my job there is kind of handling the analytics, pitch design, things like that, both on the offensive and on the pitching side. So the ball's kind of where my passion is, and we'll get to that in a little bit. But if I didn't say this, if I didn't say how you play catch equals a good delivery, Coach Rudy would drive down here and drag me off stage. So I want to make sure that that's said. So if any of you run into him, you can confirm that I said that. So when we talk about all these buckets, right, there's a time and a place for all of them, right? The body, thinking about assessments, how guys move, the weight room, thinking about mechanics. There's a time to focus on those things. For us, for the way that we look at it, that's a big time fall project for us, right? When we get those guys in our program, and now more than ever, a lot of our team are new, right? A lot of times when we get guys, it's the first time that we're seeing them because of the portal, because of just transfer activity, the overturn of roster. So when we get those guys in our program, that fall section is a big part of, we're in that bucket of the body, where we're trying to kind of understand what our guys can do, what they can do from a physicality standpoint, so that we don't spend the whole fall asking those guys to do something they may not be physically capable of doing. So as we're going to play a little video here, this is one of our guys throwing a bullpen, getting ready to throw a bullpen a couple of days ago. And so one of the things that you'll see is these are two different movers. Okay, so we've got Palmer, who's more of a pronator, likes the long toss, really behind the ball. Then we've got Brandon Stone out here, who more of a supinator, going to get around the ball more often. And you're going to see. So one of the things that we talk about when we're kind of trying to take a look at these guys and assess them is, it's not a beauty contest. We don't want those guys' mechanics to look the way that we believe they should look, right? Whether it's on the flat ground, whether it's on the mound, we've got to assess the things that they do. And so because of that, they're going to look a little different. The way that they play catch, the way that they solve problems, right? So they're out there throwing the ball 300 feet, throwing the ball 200 feet. That's a problem. Okay, that's a pitcher's out there, and his body's trying to figure out how to do that. And because of the way that guys move, because of the flexibility, because of the strength, all of those things, you're going to see different compensations for a guy being able to try to move the ball that far. We got to try to understand those so that we don't coach out the compensation. Some of, and I've got this later in the slide. Major league pitchers, guys that go out there and throw 200 innings, there's not many of those guys left. They're the best compensators in the world. They're not They don't have the best bodies. Right now we have a facility full of big leaguers. It's awesome. Every single day, guys are bullpens hitting. Like, you watch those guys' deliveries, you watch what they do. They're not the best movers in the world. They're not it's like, man, that guy's really athletic. It's funny because our players will come around and maybe not recognize the guy. So they get on there, they know the name because his name's on the TrackMan report or whatever, and they'll Google him. It's like, oh wow, that guy won six games last year in the big leagues. It's like, doesn't look like that. Okay, because those guys have found really good solutions to the problem. And sometimes in coaching, we get in the way of that because we don't know that about our player. We don't know how he moves, and so we say, hey, that doesn't look right. Let's fix that. When in reality, that's kind of a solution that he came up with to a problem that he has with the way that he moves. So I would encourage you. Like, I'm not a kinesiology guy. Like, I can't just look at a guy and figure that out. We'll talk about some of the partnerships that we have that have helped us kind of do some of that stuff. But I would encourage you to try to learn as much on that stuff as you can. And one of the easiest ways to do it is video guys when they do things. When guys are in the weight room and they squat, when guys are in the weight room, when they jump, when they do anything jumping related, it is one of the most important times that you can kind of capture how a guy moves. We talk about the hinge all the time. That's like the word now, right? Like the hinge. We got to get in our back leg. Every solution to every problem is, well, you're not using your legs, you got to use your back leg more. So our players right now are obsessed with that, right? When they're away from us, they're obsessed with that because they think that's the key to velo, that they think that's the next thing that's going to take them to the next step. Well, that hinge has got to look different for every single guy. And when you go in the weight room and you watch a guy try to jump as high as he can, or as far as he can, or throw a medicine ball as far as he can, you'll learn a lot about what it should look like, right? You'll learn a lot about how that guy produces force. You'll see how low to the ground he gets, how much into that back leg, how much on his toe. Monty talked about it, and honestly, I added this slide while we were listening because it's a really important thing about some of the stuff that Monty talked about. Hitting and pitching are so similar. This is Josh Donaldson. I got really lucky to spend some time with him last year. So the throwing and hitting are so similar. It's a rotational activity that we're trying to get as much force behind the baseball, as much force behind the bat as we can. And so a lot of those moves are going to look the same. So when those guys are in the weight room, it's the same thing. When those guys are in the weight room, all it's about is putting force into the ground. I love jumping. Like when I was at Texas, our guys would make fun of me like, Coach, are we training for the hurdles? Like, what's going on here? I love having guys try to create force, try to do those things day to day, because again, they'll learn to be better movers. There's this principle, it's called the Bernstein principle. It was taught to me, I didn't make it up. But it's your body will organize itself to accomplish a goal, right? You've just got to figure out what the right problem to give your player is when you're trying to figure movements out. Like, hey, is it, when you think a guy doesn't rotate well, hey, maybe it's a medicine ball throw, right? I can give him something light. I can do something where I can let this guy's his movement take over, not the muscles, right? So I can give him a problem, and I can watch how his body solves that problem, and that's probably how he should move on the mound, or in the box, or in third base, or in left field. It doesn't really matter. Okay, so talking about how to kind of take these things, kind of take the body to the next level. So flat ground pin the game, right? Like if the guy can't do it, if you can't play catch mechanically, you can't play catch result based the right way, we can't do it. There's no way we're going to be able to do it in the pin. Okay? If we can do it in the flat ground and in the pin, and you can't do it in the game, that's an emotional issue, right? That's managing the game, not being able to control emotions. But there's a lot to be learned there. What's the difference between when we go from the flat ground to the pin? Well, the difference is our foot's going to land a little bit later, right? We got a little bit of slope, but there's also some emotional things. I'm pitching now, right? And so some of those videos, some of those things that you took in the weight rooms, some of the movements that you're trying to create in the weight room and in flat ground, you can overlay those videos or look at them side to side and say, what's different? Why does he move differently when we do this? We've all got guys that can really play catch, right? Guys that can throw. I mean, we got a guy right now. How many guys like you convert to a pitcher and he's really good for a while, right? And then he becomes a pitcher and he starts to suck. Like, what happened here, right? Like it happens, right? Like because they start to learn more and they think they've got to do something different. That flat ground, I would even take it weight room, warm up, flat ground, pin the game. That change, what you see in different, that's an important thing. There you can solve a lot of issues right there without having to get super technical, mechanical. Because the reality of the situation is, I've been fortunate to be around some really good pitching guys, and most of them start with that. I'm not like big into mechanics, right? Like I'm not either. I don't think that like there's a certain set of ways that we can teach guys to throw, and that it's going to equal success. I think that you've got to find solutions for each guy, and each guy's completely different. Not only physically, which we're talking about right now, but mentally, what he's been told, what's in his mind, right? Like what he thinks. Like we'll get into this later, but like the shape of the way that a guy throws, the shape of his pitches, makes a huge difference in how he can make adjustments in the bullpen, right? There are a ton of guys that will turn around and ask their pitching coach, did that move? You're like, what are you telling me? It's a great pitch, right? Like a lot of our supinators pull their head off. They only see the last 7 feet of the flight of the pitch because of the angle, because the ball's sometimes moving this way. They don't think it does anything. So it's really hard to tell that guy to make pitch-to-pitch adjustments based on the flight of the ball when he ain't seen much of it, right? So we've got to know that about our guy. And so the feedback loop for him is like, hey, the pitching coach in the bullpen, but the catcher's got to be a big part of him making pitch-to-pitch adjustments. They got to sit together in between innings because, hey, he's not bringing in a lot of kind of knowledge from his own eyes. He's going to have to use the people around him. Over the rubber, over the plate. This is a huge part of kind of making guys understand what we're trying to ask. How is a player going to be evaluated? More so than ever. Guys are showing up to the ballpark like, man, this time of year, like in the fall, and it was a lot easier with guys, right? Everybody was playing. Coach McNary wasn't going to write the lineup anytime soon, so there was a little less angst to how I was going to perform that day, right? Well, so if you ask a guy to make a mechanical adjustment that might affect how the ball gets to the plate, he's a lot more apt to do that, right? Right now, no, I'm not, because I think I'm going to be evaluated by over the plate, right? So we've got to convince our player day to day, what's our focus today? Is it over the rubber? Is it me? Is it how I'm moving, an adjustment I want to make? Then we can give no feedback about where the ball goes. Okay, Wes Johnson, he's the head coach of Georgia now. Can't say anything nice about him, so, you know. But when he was at DBU, you see he had this mound in indoor, and he would pull a net. And the guys would throw the ball would travel about 5 feet. But he would say, hey, when I'm working on a guy over the rubber, I don't want him to have any feedback about over the plate. So they'd throw the pitch and go 5 feet. You know, there's no negative impact to the ball. You know, if you ask him to do something mechanically, and all of a sudden he sprays balls off the backstop, he's probably looking at you like you're crazy. But it might be the best thing for him, right? But we've got to convince that player where our evaluation is going to come today. Is it going to be over the rubber, or is it going to be over the plate? Because that's important to the player, and it's important for you too, because, again, we can all be in it. Like, I'm guilty of this. We're all as pitching coaches, we're guilty, right? Like, if a player, I got a buddy who, one of the first guys I played with that played professional baseball, he said he would have come talk to the pitchers when I first started coaching at East Tennessee State, and he would come and he would say, hey guys, like, how successful do you think you would be if you did something in a low stress, no stress environment that you practice every day, right? And the answer is pretty good, right? Well, you should be good at that, right? If you love it, you practice it every day, this is low stress, no stress. Well, that's basically what a bullpen is, right? That's what a bullpen is. So us as coaches, we got to understand that too, because if a guy throws a breaking ball and we give a verbal cue and we say, hey, do this or do this, and the next one's good, that feedback shouldn't be that cue worked, right? Like if he can't land 50%, like he might have landed that pitch just simply because like he's going to land the next one. No adjustment may have been made. He just landed the next one. So I think sometimes when we're trying to coach those guys, and the other thing, the population is 65% visual learners, okay? So it leaves 35% of the guys that learn best by you talking to them, okay? Or at max 35%. For athletes, it's probably 80%. They need to see it more than they need to hear it, right? And we've all seen the video, and I can play. I learned a lot about this when I had a son. I got a 6-year-old. Okay, it's crazy. It's great. And it's crazy at the same time. But if you tell that kid to do something, you know, when he listens to me. John can tell him to do something. He'll listen to John better than me. But if you tell him to do something, he's going to take it very literal. Okay, like keep your eye on the ball. Like we've seen the video right on YouTube. The kid bends down, puts his eye on the ball. Like, hey, Dad, I did it, right? Well, there's a little bit of truth to that. Where when we talk to our players, we don't know what they're really taking in. Right? We've all had meetings with the player, talk to him, and then you hear him repeat back to somebody else what you said, and it's like, that wasn't what I said at all, right? So, again, when we get that like over the plate focus, like those, the verbal cueing is probably that's the time to kind of turn that down, right? So more so, we're letting the ball give feedback. We're going to talk through that, not really kind of give him mechanical feedback, because again, like his focus can't completely be on making that adjustment because he knows he's being evaluated by where the ball goes, right? And so he's got to be comfortable about where the ball goes. Okay, routines. I'm going to have to do a couple of these, and I'll turn it over to John for just a second. But routines, one of the things that we have probably the hardest time kind of developing with our guys when they get there is routines, right? We want to be as individual as possible, right? And we're going to show you, we spend a lot of money to evaluate our guys and get to a place where we know, we hope we know, individually what each of these guys need, right? And so because of that, each guy's plan looks completely different, right? But what the hardest thing that when we get there is that these guys have no routine, right? The routine is like, I saw it on Twitter today, and I'm going to try it tonight, right? Like, Tread posted a video, okay, and I think I'm going to give that a go. We've all dealt with it. We deal with it too, okay? So the reality is like sitting down and going over a routine and then a why to that routine, right? What problems are we trying to solve with our routine, especially pre-throw, right? We got to get ready to throw. We have to prepare to throw. We got to prepare our body to throw. But mechanically, what are we trying to hit? What are we trying to remind our body to do that day, okay? And a big part of this, the great part about this, when a guy has a great routine, is some of those things that you're trying to get him to do that you don't want to, you're not having a lot of success verbal cueing or, doing, the traditional kind of coaching in the bullpen, you can put constraints. You can give medicine ball. You'll see some, we have a variety of stuff that we'll show in the video in just a second. But they can hit those things, number one, without you being there. So again, like less stress, right? The guy feels more comfortable to go all out and make that adjustment. But also, no verbal cueing. We're just giving a guy a goal. His body's going to accomplish it. And again, sometimes in that moment, when those guys are doing some of those routine stuff that you gave them, that compensation, that thing that they're solving the problem with will come out. Okay, and if you video those guys during that time sometimes and don't say anything, you can find that solution that you're looking for on the mound too. And then the individuality, we've talked a lot about that as we've gone through this, and we'll go, after this video, we'll have a little bit about how we get to that spot, but I'll let John talk a little bit here.
Yeah, so developing these routines that we have, the guys come in the fall and, they come from different places, high schools, and everyone has their own little stuff they like to do. I'm sure everyone's gone down to the bullpen at one point, looked at a picture and be like, what is this guy doing, right? Like the weirdest drill, but it's all about being a collaborative effort together and asking why he's doing that and why is he, like, how's he going to get them better. During right before winter break, we had our guys make goals. And it wasn't all goals about like, I want to have an ERA of this or, I want the team to win this many games. A lot of it was based off of how is he going to get better and help the team win. In aspects of the weight room, his routine stuff before, what's he moving down the mound, and different variables of some pitching aspects. But having the stuff written out beforehand, from a week-to-week basis or day-to-day, you have to make goals, and to attain those goals, you have to follow a plan every day. If you don't write it out and check it off, you just go up there with no plan every day, and just kind of doing different things and copying what this guy's doing. And a lot of these routines are based off of who you are as a pitcher. If you're, kind of categorize guys as, like big, strong bear guys or those quick, twitchy kangaroo guys. And we shouldn't be doing the same stuff as I'm doing the other guy on the other category, right? So having those two separate and showing those guys what, if I'm a strong guy, I need to get a little faster, a little more mobile. If I'm not mobile guy, maybe I should add some strength and do different things so I'm not all loosey-goosey and, staying more in the strike zone that way. listen to your body in all these drills. As you see in this video here, we have like guys kind of feeling, the lift it is, or the drive to the ground at lift. Different ideas as well. We'll have, guys use these water bags, and they're really just kind of feeling the mound, the rubber, and the slope. And we like to use it as a sense of you can't throw, a bullpen every day. You can't throw 200 throws a day. So how can we replicate, being on the mound and the throwing motion more? And we could do that, put a med ball in our hand, a water bag on our back, different band routines, just showing, different ways we could, reenact the movement down the mound, in different variables, whatever contraption it may be, but having a great feel of the ground and your body, your lift, before you even start throwing on that day, will help translate from, warm up to pen to game. This guy here, right, just kind of getting some game reps, having a good focus on these as well. You shouldn't just go out one time a week and feel that you're in like the game mindset, right? When you get to the field, you're with your guys, some joke around, whatnot, but once we're there to get work done, you got to focus up and kind of get in a game-like setting and start feeling yourself as a competitor in a day-to-day basis. So you don't go up on the mound once a week. It's, lights are on, let's go. You got to treat yourself like that on a day-to-day basis. Ends up leads into throwing. It doesn't stop with how we're kind of feeling the ground, getting our leg lift in, having good movements through all that process. We're not just standing out, here lifting our leg, playing catch. We're moving down, moving down the rubber, getting some momentum behind it. And Gordon will go here, a little Maven stuff here. This is what I like to call this is what you can't see with the naked eye as well. Everyone can watch a bullpen or watch a guy throw and say he needs to do this, but if you don't have it on video, you don't have any data to kind of back it up. You can't really tell some things with your naked eye. You have to get in depth with it.
So we're fortunate. Obviously, this is the part where we're trying to impress you with the stuff that we can do for your players when hopefully when you recruit them. So we're fortunate. We partnered with a company in Atlanta, and they came in and installed a lab in our cages. We've got markerless motion capture, throwing a force plate mount. We've got a track portable in there. But the reality of this is that all we're doing here, and it's unbelievable the breakdown, and we would no need to go through it, but they create a skeleton figure of our guys. We can see a lot of the movement patterns that we're trying to create. One of the things that technology, and look, I know I'm pro tech, right? Just get it out in the open. But one of the things that this does for us so much is validate a lot of the things that we've been trying to talk to our players about. Like when we do this assessment, a lot of times the things that we were talking about, whether it was last year or the fall or whatever, it's validated by the information that we get here. And a lot of times for players, not to say that they're not going to buy in just when we tell them, but man, it's a lot harder to argue, when it's like, hey man, these are just numbers. Like it just is what it is, right? So again, this gives us a sense too of like some of those compensations, right? Like the answer at the end of this isn't always like, hey, like our guy doesn't, he doesn't get down to the mound as much as another guy. Well, hey, like how your pitch shape, how you throw makes a difference, right? Our pronators are guys that are down the mound, they're guys that are more linear movers. Like they're going to put more force in the ground. They're going to get more force to second base. They're probably going to unweight more, right? Our guys that are supinators, hey, we're going to see more side-to-side action. We're probably going to see a little bit more like spike vert, and then maybe have that little secondary spike that you may not necessarily love, but that's what happens with supinators, right? And we'll get into a little bit about why here in a little bit. But again, all this stuff is great, but it still takes someone to interpret it, give it to the players in an actionable way, right? So that we're not just hitting them over the head with information. Now, we share everything with our players. We don't hide anything from them. They got a box. Everything that we break down, we give to them. We want them an active participant in their development. So everything that we do here, they're going to have access to, and they're going to get an opportunity to look through and talk through with us. Another partnership we have. One of the things that we don't have, the expertise necessarily in place is just that movement assessment, movement screening. And a lot of your players are doing amateur movement screenings, okay? So all these, virtual training people, all these things, they'll put guys through a virtual screening. A lot of your players have probably already done it. They set up their camera, they go do these stretches, and then the algorithm tells them, hey, you don't have enough external rotation in your arm or in your hip or whatever. So a lot of your players are doing amateur versions of these, I promise. But we went with Rockland Performance, Nuncio, those guys I think are the best in the country. They came in and did strength assessments for our guys, one-legged, two-legged stuff, all through the beginning of the year. When we got here, all of us basically got here at the same time. So this was the first kind of interaction with our players. They created an individual plan for our guys of some correctives, things that they can do, and that's part of that process of building routines with our guys. Again, I know not everybody's going to have access to something like this, but there's an opportunity now with as much data and as much things as out there in the open for you to be able to kind of get to a thing where you feel pretty good about 4 or 5 exercises, 4 or 5 tests for your guys. And as you start to get more data year after year, year on year, you can start to see things that correlate, right? Like, hey, man, all my guys that can, pistol squat are really good movers. Some guys that are really good one-legged, or some of my best pitchers are guys that are a little lax two-legged. Hey, those guys sometimes can't hit, There's some information out there that if you start compiling and keeping it with things like this, that can give you a little bit of direction with where you want to go with your players.
I think it's a good way too, having that every year just to track the growth of those guys and seeing, obviously they're going to be doing the work, but seeing how much, impact it actually has on the performance as well, tracking it over time and seeing different categories to get better in, and then seeing how it reflects on the field.
Okay, so this is right in my wheelhouse. This is the stuff that I like.
If you heard the thing, baseball's not rocket science, he begs to differ.
So why do we talk about arsenals, building arsenals, not pitches? Okay, I'm going to give you 2 quick stories on why we don't build pitches, we build arsenals. Okay, like everybody else in the post-COVID era, we had a starting pitcher when I was at Duke. He was actually a closer for us. And All-American, had a great year. We're going to make him the Friday night starter the next year. The issue was that we had to be about 30% fastball. Fastball was vulnerable, dead zone fastball. Good velo, but he got hit, right? So if we're going to make him a starter, that's going to be a problem. Well, I thought that was going to be a problem. So we said we got to get Bird on this fastball. Okay, so we're really gonna put the clean flago in his hand. We're gonna do some things. That's going to be the focus of our fall, is getting some Bird in the fastball. Okay, I have the young man, very compliant, good coach pleaser, who wants to do what I ask him to do. And we did it. We created a really good Bird fastball. He had the worst year of his career. Okay, worst year of his career by far. The fastball got hit. So did the slider. So did the changeup. Okay, I wasn't smart enough at the time to understand that nothing happens locally. I think that's the last thing on everything is global. Nothing is local, okay? We think that's only going to affect the fastball. We think that putting a clean flago in his hand, I'm not saying that clean flago is wrong, okay? I know those guys, good guys. I'm not saying it's a bad product. It's like everything, right? It's how you use it, okay? So we think that, hey, that's just, on the fastball, he's going to do this thing. It's not true. It's going to become his delivery, okay? And so the things that create a straight fastball that has vert and is efficient is not the same things that create a good slider and create a good changeup. So what I did was, a guy who was 30-30 on pitches, I made the 60% of the pitches, the other pitches that he threw, very poor, okay? He got hit because of it, okay? So whenever you're making adjustments, when we start with Arsenal, we're starting to build a plan for how we're going to attack hitters, okay? 2 things that I think you have to think about is, 1, what does he do well already? Okay, and let's build off that, number 1. Okay, how does he move? Because that's going to make a big reason why we're going to do what we're going to do. But also, we're going to solve problems. Okay, so when we get there, we have a lot of data on guys. Like, we get a guy from the transfer portal. He might be, really struggles against left hand. We got a kid out of the transfer portal. struggles really left on left. Guys hit like 400 off of them. Okay, that's an issue, all right? In today's game, that's an issue. Solving the platoon problem is the most important thing for Arsenal building, because the more options you have to get right and left out, the more options you have to start. Okay, and so we have to solve that problem with that kid. How do we? We're gonna do something with his arsenal to solve that problem. We're not just gonna pull it out of the air. That's how you got to start. Okay, not just building a pitch in a vacuum. To tell you another story, same year, we had a left-hand pitcher who was a freshman All-American the year before, set the school strikeout to walk ratio. Okay, 40% swing and miss on the changeup. He was supposed to pitch in the Cape that season, but he pitched enough innings, and he decided to go to I won't name the place, but he went to a training facility. Okay, and came back, and his changeup was a right-handed slider. It was unbelievable. I mean, I'm telling you, when you throw the bullpen, there'd be guys come over from like shagging, like, I gotta watch this thing. It was unbelievable. The numbers were ridiculous. Okay, we get into the season. Remember now, this pitch was 40% swing and miss the year before. Okay, we get into the season. They ain't even swinging at it 20% of the time. Okay, not swinging and missing. They're not even swinging at it 20% of the time. Okay, again, what I didn't realize is that if the vertical or the horizontal movement is so outside the pale of all the other pitches that a guy throws, hitters go, I'm not up here to hit a changeup. That's a changeup. I'm not swinging. Right? And we created a pitch that moves so much it was hard for him to put in the zone. So you got a pitch that guys take a lot, and he's having a tough time putting in the zone. We just got rid of his best weapon. He didn't have a good year. Okay? Now he's with the Dodgers. They fixed it. He's rolling. Okay? But those are things, and I had to learn the hard way. Those are things that you've got to consider when we're in there doing pitch design, right? Like that, I hate even calling it that. It's not pitch design. It's arsenal development. Right? We want to solve those issues, okay? So we talk about the pronation and supination bias, okay? This is something we talk about all the time. A couple things to think about with this. It's not an either or. It's a continuum, right? Some guys are really on one end or on one end or the other. Some guys are dead in the middle. You can find guys dead in the middle. Those are the guys you want. Because in today's game, Monty talked about, diversify. How many options can we give a hitter to have to cover? That's what we want to do. We chased vert for a long time. We had all these pronators. It's the same thing in professional baseball. Hard for guys to be starters now because you hitting coaches, what can you train? You can train high spin, high vert fastballs, right? That's what pitching machines do, okay? So we've got to diversify. It's really hard to do with guys that are all the way over on one side of this continuum. But knowing this about your players will allow you to really make smart decisions about how you're going to build their arsenal. So, and I call it investment cost, right? So let's talk about Clayton Kershaw. Clayton Kershaw may be the best pitcher in our generation, right? You look at all over. I know he's had his postseason struggles, but maybe the best pitcher that we've ever had. He's a high release slot left-hander. Okay, that starts. If I didn't tell you who he was, what pitch do you think he might feature a lot? Changeup, right? Going to face a lot of right-handed hitters. He's got to have a changeup, right? Less than 1% of the pitches he's thrown in his career. Okay, his velo came down. The changeup comes for everybody when your velo comes down. He had to do it later in his career, but less than 1% of the pitches that Clayton Kershaw has thrown in his career have been changeup. Wow! Like, wouldn't that pitch be effective against right-handers? Because he's a super pronator. That's why he throws fastball up in the zone that at 90 miles an hour blows guys away. That's why he throws a curveball. Okay, and that's why with the slider that he throws, really gyro spun right off. There's a great video on YouTube if you want to go look at it of Clayton Kershaw releasing a slider right off of his index finger, and just you can see that, and that pitch has become a serious weapon for him. Okay, but the Dodgers were smart enough when they drafted this guy out of, I think, Dallas area. To not, what if they didn't understand that about him, and they spent they sent him the rookie ball and said, Clayton, I want you to throw 40% changeups and go figure it out. We wouldn't know the name. Okay, they were smart enough to understand like that the investment cost for that pitch to be good is really high, and the end goal is not going to be very good. Okay, because pronators, and this was when Kershaw was there. It was back before we had the kick chain grips. We can talk. We'll get to that. But the reality is that they made a smart decision, and they said, "Hey, let's work with what you do." Okay, and so the curveball, and they said, "Hey, you're going to need one other pitch, something to end on right-handers because that was a problem." He had the traditional splits where right-handers were getting a lot better than left-handers because of the curveball. And so they said, "Hey, we're going to build a slider." He took to that because they were smart enough to not say traditional. We're going to do kind of a gyro slider, and so because of that, he's a Hall of Famer. Okay, but that can happen with your guys too. You can bring a guy in. I've done it. We're all guilty of it. You want him to start. He's got good command, whatever. And you try to ask him to do something that first fall or that first spring, whatever. That it's just going to be really hard for him to do. And you get frustrated. He gets frustrated because he's doing everything you ask, and you think like, "Why isn't it working?" Okay, he's going, "Why isn't it working?" Well, it's because he's just not built to do that. Okay. So making some of those decisions will help players immensely figure out their arsenal. Plus, for us especially, if we don't figure it out in 12 months with our players, they're gone. Like we have to figure it out quickly. We don't have 18 months. We don't have 24 months. If at the beginning of that fall, that second year, they don't feel like there's going to be a place for them, an area for them to be able to impact the team, they're gone. So we have to work really hard to understand what it is that guys can do so that we can give those guys a plan, build an arsenal that will allow them to have success right away and keep the investment cost of time down because that's what we're fighting against everywhere. Okay, flight doesn't equal arm. Okay, so what I mean by that is you're steep, but you sink it. Think Blake Trien. Or you're out here and you lift it. Think Josh Hader, Chris Sale. Okay, that pitch is going to overperform. Okay, it's going to overperform its metrics. Okay, Josh Hader has, if he came in through a bullpen for you, you had Rapsodo, you looked at it, you'd say, or Trackman or whatever, you'd look at it and say it's a pretty dead zone. Okay, well, they don't play that way. Okay, and we'll talk about why. But if you can mismatch those things, you're gonna be successful. So, like guys that are higher over the top, if you can give them pitches that are going to work with steep, absolutely. Hey, that's great. What happens most times with those guys, and it's the reason why it's an outlier, is you've got to match the pitch orientation and the pitch arsenal to the slot. If you have a guy that doesn't throw strikes, check that first. Okay? If he's up here and he's throwing a really inefficient pitch, you know, he's getting a lot of gyro spin. You watch it; he's got a lot of arm side run. Okay, we got to do something with the grip. Okay, that will help him throw strikes a lot quicker than saying, "Hey, throw strikes." Okay, or "Hey, this is not a mechanical issue." You can change the grip and try to take some of that horizontal out of it because it'll match the way that his arm is working. And that's going to give him a really good opportunity to throw a lot more strikes quickly without having to change anything. Okay, just by matching that. And again, if you get a guy that arm doesn't match the flight, hey, you're going to have an outlier and he throws strikes. Absolutely, that's great. Just not many guys out there that way. That's why they're outliers. Okay, why do these things matter? Why does this work? So one of the things that you've probably seen a lot in the last little bit is seam shifted weight, right? Like, you know, it's a big thing. SSW, like everybody's wanting to do it, right? Well, hitters swing at expected outcomes. Hitters, I'm sorry, Monty, don't. But you guys come back to the dugout and you say a lot of things that are just like not true. Like, it's unbelievable. You go ahead, hey, I saw the spin, you know, and so I knew it was a slider, and I said, bullshit. No, okay, you didn't, okay. But your whole life, you've watched balls come out of guys' hands, and you've done a math equation. You're like, I've seen this before at this speed. Okay, it's going to end up right there, and that's where you swing. Okay, that's what happens. Okay, we can. I don't. You know, if you all want to, you know, say all that, it's fine. It's just not true. So if we can do something in that equation, okay, that messes with it, that's why guys are good. Why? This is why I love this stat. Like you know, the third time through the order, right? In the big leagues now or everywhere, there's the third time through the order ding, right? Pitchers don't pitch as well third time through the order. Okay, has nothing to do with you know, we've heard it all. Guys don't train as much. You know, they don't throw too many fastballs. They don't throw enough fastballs. All these things. Nothing to do with it. The hitter starts to get more pieces of that equation, okay, and suddenly he solves the problem, okay, and that slider that worked his first at bat goes to the right field seats because he solved the equation. So us putting a new pitcher in there restarts the formula. And I'll tell you guys, pitching guys, keep a tack of how many guys swings and misses at, because he gets a little information if he swings and misses. He gets very little if he takes, a little information if he swings and misses, a little more if he fouls it off, and puts it in play quite a bit. Why do you think hitters get better if you 3-2, a bunch of foul balls? Why do you think they get better? Their results are immensely better because they have more variables of the equation now. Okay, so sure, when we're trying to build an arsenal, if we can put some sort of problem in that outlier, put an outlier in that equation, absolutely, we'll do that. But the reality is, let's remember, they're outliers for a reason. Okay, there's a difficulty level that comes with that, so we have to understand kind of what we're trying to accomplish there and if it's worth that risk. Okay, so when I worked in Texas, Houston Street was there. I don't know if you guys spend some time with Houston Street, you'll never forget it if you do. He is insane in all the best ways. He's a crazy human being, but he has a great story about how some of this helped him, and this is way before we had any sort of analytics. So his dad, if you guys don't know, his dad was a quarterback in the football team. You know, he was part of the reason why Houston was there. Like, he wasn't some high recruit that everybody just had to have. It's like, well, James Street was a quarterback and his son's a decent baseball player, we're going to take him, right? So he gets there and he's playing in the fall. This is back when we play a bunch of games in the fall. So Frank Anderson's his pitching coach, and he goes out and throws. He doesn't throw any strikes, and the ones he does got hammered. Okay? So they go to the next outing, does the same thing. Frank said, hey, you know, Houston, let's meet over here. We'll throw a bullpen. With nobody else around, we're gonna try something. Okay? If you watch Houston Street walk around, do anything, if you ever see anything, like everything he does is like this. Like, I mean, he talks like this. Everything he does, he's supinating, like all the time. Like, it's hilarious, like, just to see him. This is why we had this conversation. So he said, hey, you know, we're gonna go there. We're gonna drop you down. He said, we're gonna drop you down. We're gonna give you a sinker. Okay, all right, sinker and a slider from there. All right, so he throws his first bullpen. So fastball away, dime. And even Houston's like, whoa, okay, I get that spot. I felt really comfortable. Okay, hit the spot again. Okay, wow, you throw a slider over there. Okay, and obviously the rest is history. One of the most decorated closers in college baseball, you know, borderline Hall of Famer. But the stuff is just okay. Right? The command was the biggest thing. His arm slot finally matched what the orientation, what he wants to do. He wanted to be a horizontal mover. He wanted to be a rotator. Like, they put his arm slot there. His command instantly got better. There was no mechanical change. Just the fact that now all of a sudden his arm matches his ball flight. Okay, and a lot of times when you make that adjustment, it's pretty much like that. You don't have to we don't have to do, you know, a lot of tweaking. It's like, hey, guy feels it right away and goes, wow, okay, like that's going to help. Okay. All right, release location versus ball flight. Okay, so ball flight's important. Release location is key. Okay, we talked about Josh Hader. Okay, we talked about that. A lot of the guys that I would say 5 of the last 7 Cy Young winners, very pedestrian ball flight. Nothing about their ball flight you say, man, that's unbelievable. Okay, what they do have is release weirdness. Okay, Josh Hader releases the ball all the way from the first base side. Chris Sale all the way from no one throws the ball from where no one that since we've been measuring throws the ball from where Chris Sale throws the ball, and they sure as hell don't throw it from there and lift. Okay, so if you have guys that you can move on the rubber, if you have guys that throw from weird slots, like the ball flight can be a lot more pedestrian and you can have success. Okay, you don't have to have unbelievable metrics. If the ball release location, if it's low and it lifts, you can have a lot of success. If it's steep and it sinks, you have a lot of success. If you're way out to the side and you can make the ball go horizontally, you're going to have a lot of success. So when we talk about, we'll talk about it in a little bit, but we talk about rubber placement. That's important too. Okay, but it's the further you get away from negative movement. Okay, so like the way we think about movement is kind of wrong. Like the ball doesn't come out of our hand and go right. Like it goes left before it goes right, and you have to throw it left to get it right. And we'll have some video on that. But the further that you get away from that side, the more difficult it is to throw strikes. The more successful you're going to be, the more that pitch is going to play up, but it becomes more difficult to throw strikes. Because the guy, again, it's harder to get the ball that way. Okay? So those are all things that we have to think about when we're building arsenals. Let me talk about Major League starters. This year in baseball, you'll see more pitches thrown by, as far as like types of pitches, by Major League starters any time in the history. Everybody's going to have to sink it, force it, and cut it. I'm going to do this. And because hitters have gotten better. They've gotten better. We can't just do one thing. You have to. They're going to diversify across. When you get through lineups multiple times, they're going to have to be able to do that. So you see a lot of guys like Zach Wheeler's one of those guys. He does it all, right? He's just really good. He's figured out how to do that. You can't ask an 18-year-old kid to try to do that. That's very difficult. There's some guys out there that are. But it's very difficult to take a guy and say, hey, I know this isn't what's best for you. Like Garrett Cole. Like Garrett Cole lift, hard breaking ball right, that's his thing. He also throws a two-seam because left-handers were getting him. So he needed something going away from left-hander. It's not a good pitch metrically, but he needs it, right? That's a hard ask for an 18-year-old or a 15-year-old. That's a hard ask because it's not. Again, those guys are the best in the world, and they can make some of those things happen that maybe us mere mortals can't. Okay, release is a process, not a moment. Okay, so you're going to watch two different guys. So we got Roman Kimball, super pronator on this side. We got Dylan Eskew, super supinator on this side. And I can't do it because this thing doesn't pause. But if you pause it, release for guys, especially your supinators, you couldn't, and you didn't have seam orientation, you couldn't tell me if it was a cutter or a sinker. We talked about negative movement. You're going to see that ball go left and then go right. Okay, so why is this important? Why is thinking about release as a process and not a moment important? Okay, I mean, but I like to play golf, right? So if I tee the ball further in front of my foot, okay, I'm going to be, my face should be, I swing weird, but should be more closed, right? As you get further back here, it should be more open, right? And I use my body to square the ball. So your pitchers do the same thing in your arm. Why is the extension shorter on breaking balls when you get extension? Guys don't stride shorter. Okay, they let it go earlier in the release window because that's how you get to the side of it. If you hold on to it, you're going to be behind it. You want to throw a horizontal pitch, you got to let go of it sooner. Okay. So when we start to teach movement, and that explains why this ball, if this was a cutter, he throws one, but if this was a cutter, that would explain why he needs to be on that side of it. He's in the same exact spot for a cutter, he just holds on to the ball longer. Okay? When you start thinking about release as a process, like whether you lead with your heel, the heel of your hand, or your fingers becomes really, really important. And again, you look at this guy and you say, hey, throw a traditional changeup. Like, how's he going to do that? Like, how's he going to do the same mechanics that he throws a fastball with? It won't be any good. It'll be hard. His miss will be hard and straight. And guys will be rounding the bases, and they won't know they hit a changeup. They'll pull a changeup for a homer and won't know. Now, could you get Roman Kimball to throw a good one in a bullpen? Sure. But you are who you are 10% of the time. You are who you are 90%. Okay? Our pitcher's the same way. Like, I throw 95. No, you touched 95 one day when it was warm and there was a 30-mile-an-hour tailwind. Like, you're not 95. Like, when you start to develop guys, you have to develop them based on what they're going to be 90% of the time, not what they're going to be 10% of the time. So, Roman Kimball could throw a good changeup, a traditional style changeup, 10% of the time. You gave him 5 of them in a row, he'd find one, and you go, oh, yeah, that's it. It ain't going to be it. In the game, it's 2-2, and the bottom of the 8th, when you call for it, you're going to get a shitty fastball, and it's going to get in. Okay? Same thing here. Like, Dylan, we're going to ask Dylan to do some different things, but if you ask Dylan to throw predominantly 4 seams, you're going to get a dead zone fastball that's going to be missed in the middle of the plate more often than not, and what's going to happen, he's going to get murdered. Okay? It's the same thing if you ask him to throw a curveball, right? Like, we think about breaking balls that way. Like, we never ask that guy to throw, like, hey, man, curveball's probably not the thing for you. You're telling this to this guy. Like, we think about it that way, but we don't think about our fastballs that way. And so this is electronic, great. It's a great tool. It's awesome to have. But the reality of the situation is you can do this pretty much with an iPhone. Okay, you can stand behind guys and see it too. The first guy that I ever had, Drew Korzybski, he's the head coach or the pitching coach at Kingston State Community College now. I had him at East Tennessee State, big time sinker guy. And I would just stand behind him and watch him throw what I thought were cutters. And I'm like, how is this happening? You know? Well, the reality was he just held on to the ball longer than if he wanted to cut it. That's why a lot of your sinker guys are good slider guys, right? It's the same thing, just where you release it. That's why you need to teach sinker guys a cutter, traditional grip a lot of times. It's very easy, just about that release window. So you just think about like your golf swing, right? The more from here, okay, I'm gonna be more on the outside of the ball the earlier I let it go, okay? And then I'm gonna be behind the ball more the more I hold on to it. That's why your forcing guys are more linear, and that's why your sinker slider guys step to the side. Why do guys step across their body? Well, just to give them longer to hold on to the slider, to be able to sweep it around, right? Because if they step straight, you have to let it go sooner. It's shittier pitch. Those things, again, like if you had a guy who was stepping close and you just wanted to, I want everybody to step straight to the target, well, you're going to sacrifice something because of that. Okay, so how can we figure out what our guys are if we don't have TrackMan Edgerton? Okay. We'll start over there with the supinator. Just more horizontal pitch profile, right? Just the ball moves. If you get them out to 150 feet, they're the guy that catch play partners. Gee, Jesus, they're hit in the chest. He keeps running all the way over here. Okay. The breaking ball's a weapon. He loves throwing it, right? Like he just like you put a slider in his hands, like hell yeah, like all right, let's do this. Like he's probably a supinator. Blues mechanics past 180 feet. If you video them, once you get 180 feet, all of a sudden the arms up. They start being a little bit more linear, or they just can't play catch at all. Okay, loves the circle change. These are guys that their stuff's going to play the most on the arm side of the rubber. Traditional grips are going to work the best for those guys. The traditional grips that everybody's used. Okay, those are the type of grips you want to put in those guys' hands. Prodators, they're your guys that the ball looks like a pitching machine, right? Like very efficient. Okay, they're going to have fastball profiles that are pretty straight, or maybe have a little cut in them, or perceived cut, okay? The breaking ball, if it moves, is going to be slow. If they throw it hard, it ain't going to move, right? Those are your guys like, dude, we got to find a breaking ball, right? It's like, think about your catcher, okay? You put your catcher, you said, hey, we're going to use your catcher strong arm, we're going to use him as a closer. I remember Jason Mott with the Cardinals catcher, had an unbelievable arm through 100. Like, when you start with those, they're going to have a hard time throwing a hard breaking ball. They make it move, you know, and it's going to be 7, you know, if they throw 85, it's going to be 69. Those kind of guys, but those don't play real well, okay? And if it's hard, it's not going to move. Those are, you can get cutters away. The change-up miss is going to be hard. You got to use unique grips for those guys to be successful. Offset, kick grips, most of the glove side of the rubber, wide glove side of the rubber, most of the game is played on the glove side of the plate. They're not going to have a lot of this horizontal movement. Makes it really difficult to get to the glove side. If you have a guy right now that's really having trouble getting over there, again, if you can throw a hard one and don't move a lot, well, let's put him over here, okay? And then you can make the ball move to first base just a little bit. That's what the game is right now. Can you make the ball move to first base? You know, up and into lefties, away to right-handers. You get a prodator, you get him all the way on this side, you give him all the room for his arm to work into the plate, then his break ball can be harder and doesn't have to move as much because you can strike it or you go for a ball. All right. Let's see what else here. Okay, so this is, we have this conversation with our players a lot. This is the MLB results. This is from 2023 of different kind of profiles of fastballs. Okay, obviously we could all love to have lift run. You know, the run value changes as you go down. The reality of the situation is, I have guys all the time. This is what guys do. They throw the fastball. They get their report back after the bullpen. They come and see me and they say, "Is this good or bad?" My response every single time is, "It's neither. It just is. Like it is what it is. We have to plan off of it, but it is what it is, right?" So, you know how you decide usage a lot of times is this: how good is this fastball, right? And again, you don't have to have all this stuff, but just track in a scrimmage, like, okay, how much swing and miss does this fastball create, right? in our level, if you get, on average, fastball's gonna create 20% swing and miss. If you did a hot zone, where that is, it's most of the top of the zone, okay? Just across college baseball. If that box moves down, okay, and it is in the zone, okay, and the percentages go 25 to 30%, okay, now we have something. Now we have a fastball that we can play. Okay, that arsenal doesn't have to be under 50%. We can use the fastball. Okay, some of the reality with that is like, hey, for you, again, you don't have all the data. You got a check mark. How often does stuff get a swing and miss in the zone? Okay, the guys that get more of that's the pitch that you use the most. Okay, and one of the things that I tell I got a crew of nerds. They like being called that. One of the things I tell those guys all the time is the only rule is it's got to work, right? There's no rule in baseball that says you have to throw a fastball. The Canely guy for the Yankees threw, what, 50 straight changeups because it's his best pitch, right? The reality is you've got to figure out what it is that he's good at, and you hope it's something, okay? And then lean on that, especially if you're trying to get 3 to 6 outs, okay? Lean on that. Maybe it's a slider. Your Supernator guy's got a dead fastball. But hey, the slider's really good. Hey, lean on that. Okay, then pick your spots with the fastball. But having something where you can really kind of rate for you, okay, like what your stuff is over the course of time gives you a really good opportunity to make some decisions. So that when the first time that you have him, you go out there, you're not getting killed because you're like, I don't know how it's going to play yet. I'm going to throw, 70% fastball, and he gets murdered, and it's like, okay, now he's afraid of the zone. That once you have a little bit of tracker, hey, let's prepare. Our bullpens, need to prepare in a way that we're going to have guys prepared to throw 60% slider or 30% fastball or whatever the case may be, and having some long-term statistics help on that. And like I said, I can give this to anybody. We have it on breaking balls, fastballs, the whole thing. We're fortunate here. We've got in-house. A lot of people talk about sharing data. We're about it. We give our guys everything, okay? And look, we know, they got advisors, they train at home, all that kind of stuff. But it's a lot better than trying to gatekeep it, okay? But I'll be honest with you, a lot of times guys bring really good ideas to the table too, because they read, they listen, they're on Twitter, they see all these things, and then guy will bring an idea that will help work with it. Again, this is just some of the stuff we do. Moving just a little bit. This is kind of what we do when we're done. What are we currently? Where can we how can we help? Okay, so planning the bullpen. All right, so once you this is the kind of we're getting to the part of how to win, right? We've got the body, the ball. We're going to go how to win. So how do we plan a bullpen? Okay, number one, we got to let the player know how we're going to be evaluated, right? Because that changes the attitude. If he spikes a breaking ball and we're over the rubber today, that shouldn't create a negative reaction, right? What's our goal? Okay, make sure sometimes, we're all guilty of it. Sometimes we go to the bullpen with a goal and the player's got a different goal in mind, okay? We need to make sure before we throw a pitch what the goal is. And these are just some of the things some of the ways that I describe bullpens, pitch development, lineup prep, feel good, whatever the case may be. Do we have a pitch count floor? Are we trying to rank guys up? Do we have a pitch count ceiling? We need to have that conversation because that might make a difference. But how many breaking balls we throw in a row if it sucks, right? If we have a hard cap at 35 because he's one day short or whatever the case may be, we need to have that conversation so we can really prioritize the things that we want. We really want to hit. Fastball command. We start all of our bullpens with fastball command. Okay. Again, if you got a big time pronator that's going to pitch up in the zone, it's probably not great to ask him to start with 10 fastballs left side down, right? So you need to come up with some options for what a guy's going to do in the game, right? So it might be we're going to set the string up. We're going to go 5 above, 5 below, right in the middle of the heart of the zone. We might say, hey, we're going to set up a tennis ball in the middle of the plate. We're going to go 5 away, 5 in. Okay, we're going to try to put a ball in every quadrant. We've got the track strike zone, so guys can go, okay, I'm going to put one up in the top right, bottom left, whatever. And we might be game like, we're going to go 2 away, 1 in. Flip the hitter, 2 away, 1 in. Whatever the case may be. But I think having a fastball command portion where a guy can really hold himself accountable to what he's going to do, Okay, and again, this is a kind of just a generic. If the guy doesn't throw 40% fastball, Hanley probably is not starting with the fastball command portion of his book. He's going to throw a field section. So, like, we have to decide in the game, if you throw a bad breaking ball, not always, but if you throw a bad breaking ball, you're probably going to a fastball, right? If you miss with it, we're going to fastball. So the bullpen can be like that, or it could be, hey, I'm going to make an adjustment pitch to pitch, so I'm going to throw 4 breaking balls in a row. I'm going to throw 3 breaking balls in a row, so I can find that adjustment. This is a great time to stop a guy and say, hey, what did you do there? Like, that one was terrible, this one was good. What did you think? Sometimes you'll get a good answer, and it's like, hey, the next time that I got to go to the mound and try to fix the breaking ball, I got something that worked for it, right? Like I said, or you're going to be game there where it's like, hey, I can't repeat the same pitch or same location. I might go, change up away, fastball up, whatever. Problem solving, whatever issues we had in our last outing. Like, this is the thing that for me is like the most important thing. It's like all this. I work for my last 2 bosses. Okay, this is on video, right? So my last 2 bosses are older guys, right? They're old school guys. They're 60s. So when I got the job in Texas, Coach Pierce wears boots, 10-gallon hat, and he's usually got some tobacco in his mouth. So analytics were not like the top of mind when I got there, right? But one of the things that, like, how I feel like I won those guys over and trying to win Coach Maneri over as well is that, this stuff just, all it does is simplifies that time. Like, we were all going to get there, right? Like, we were going to get there. Even if we didn't have this stuff, we would have figured this out about these guys, right? But what the problem is that he throws it on Friday, and he sucks, and he throws a bullpen on Tuesday. You got to have a plan to fix it on Tuesday, okay? And it's got to work, because he throws on Tuesday, you got to go again on Friday, right? And then, in the meantime, you got a Saturday game, a Sunday game, and then you're prepping for another opponent. So we've got to shorten that window so that when we go into this bullpen, we have a plan. So if the tilt is screwed up on the slider, we know in this problem fixing thing, it's like, hey man, we're going to try to get this tilt right at 9 o'clock. Let's see how many in a row we can put at 9 o'clock. What do you feel there? That's going to help shorten that window of like getting better instead of like, okay, like let's see if the slider's any good. And the reality is sometimes it's hard for us to tell, right, without a hitter in there, and you can't face hitters on Tuesday after you pitch on Friday. So the goal of this is to make that window shorter so that we can make an adjustment and that guy can get better right away. Okay, and so I think that part of it is really important. And then we get to a game section. If it's a Tuesday bullpen and everything's good, we may face the first 3 hitters in the lineup. Okay, or we may say, hey man, you really struggle to throw strikes for left-handers. We're going to put a left-hander in there, and then we're going to see how many strikes we can throw. And then I give 8 for him, and you can learn a lot in those 8 that he throws. What does he throw and why? Like, why does he use 6 sliders out of those 8? Like, maybe he doesn't feel good with it, or he loves it, right? Or hey man, like we don't use his changeup at all, but he just threw it 6 times. Like, why? And that's a great opportunity to have some conversation as well about what they're thinking, because a lot of times, we all have them, like the compliant coach, the pleased kid. Like, you never gonna say anything, but it's like, Coach, my changeup and flat, it's like unbelievable. Like, oh hey, well I would like to know. Like, we'll see what we can do with it. That's a great time to get some feedback about what he's thinking. Daily checklist. This is Coach Rudy's. Put this in here. Again, these are just reminders, things that when we're out of those first 2 buckets, when we're not working on the body anymore, we're not working on the ball, we're trying to win. These are some of the things that we got to remind our guys daily. We're going to work in the stretch and wind up. If that's something that you do. When we stretch, we're going to hold the ball for different times, right? Because so many guys are uncomfortable holding the ball, not being able to make a pitch, but we don't ever practice that. But then we go in the game, and we got to execute that with a really good runner at first. We got to have a man on second. Like some of our flat ground work's got to be a man on second, because the reality of the situation is you're going to throw off the mound 1 time in a non-live situation a week, right? If you're a starter. So we've got to make sure that flat ground time is worked. Throw with the down plane, you know why. Hey, what's your best sequence to a right-hander, and what's your best sequence to a left-hander? You need to hit that every single day, because we need to know that we can go to that. If you're coming in to face a right-hander and your best sequence, Roman Kimball is cutter, fastball up, curveball down, like you better be able to execute that, because that's what you're coming in to do. making pitch adjustments. So we've talked about the bullpen. This is our adjustment pitch to pitch. When we miss the flat ground, we want to be able to do that. View signs. Throw hard every day. Like so many guys, I've had them, that don't want their arm to go faster. They're just saving it for Friday, right? They're saving it for the next start. The reality is that will eventually cannibalize velocity and command. Okay, if you throw hard, you need to throw hard. Okay, and the guys that don't throw hard, they need to throw at their capacity because that's the only way to maintain and gain velocity. Okay, there's a lot of other things you can do, but the reality is the throwing piece is the most important piece of what we do. Off the mound. So our game, pitching side is so weird, right? Like you hitting guys, it's so easy for you guys. You can hit all the time, right? You can hit. There's no max number of swings you can take. Like you hit all the time. All your hands might get sore, but that's about it, right? For pitching, like we're only going to get full boat off the mound one time a week, okay? And so we've got to find other opportunities to get off the mound. You saw some of the pre-work that we do off the mound. Okay, sub-max bullpens, okay? But it goes back to, again, like what's the goal? Like you got to make sure the player understands that. You can't put TrackMan in there and then say, hey, throw a sub-max bullpen. Like, okay, yeah, we're going to measure the velocity, but I'm going to throw it, that ain't going to work, okay? So we've got to find ways to get them off the mound. Like some guys are really sore the day after the pitch. Some guys are really sore 2 days after the pitch. You got to find that out about your guy. When's another opportunity for us to get on the mound and at least replicate some of the movements that we're trying, especially if it's a mechanical issue or just seeing the ball go through the hoop, right? Like if the guy can't locate a break ball, at least get on the mound sub-max before his bullpen, landing a few, it's like, oh, phew, okay, I can do this. And then the bullpen's going to be a lot better because of it. Tempo, so for us with the pitch clock, like you got to start playing catch like that, right? Like when we come set, when we're doing our flat ground work, we can't hold the ball for 30 seconds and then make another pitch. It's not the way the game's played anymore. We got to throw the ball every 20 seconds. So we've got to make sure that those are things that we do. Because again, we're not going to get those many opportunities. All that stuff, strike percentages, taking some pride and throwing, and then delivery drills, picks, that kind of stuff. All right, Monty's over there jingling his keys at me. So, I think it's 11:30. We're good. We can go all over, but
You good?
yeah, Monty, come on up here. Yeah.